and welcome to our web series and podcast on the theme of Never Stop Learning with Epsom International School. You join us for our first podcast, and we're very fortunate to be joined by the entrepreneur, Sarma. Good afternoon, Aaron.
Good afternoon, Matthew. How are you doing?
Doing very well. Thank you very much. And yes, thank you for giving us some time with yourself this afternoon.
Congratulations on the first ever episode. Let's see how this goes.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, looking forward. First of all, then, I've introduced you as an entrepreneur, but you know better than us. Can you give us just a little summary of who is Sarma and how did he get perhaps to be on this podcast this afternoon?
Thank you. I guess my journey has been a long one. I guess I've been in some sort of business for almost 20 years plus now. But I remember, I guess my earliest entrepreneurial endeavor was when I was in school. And we had this thing where you could sell stickers to your friends, right? And I remember somebody came and said, you pay 30 ringgit, you get a sticker pack, and then you can customize the stickers and sell it to your friend, right? I convinced my aunt at the time, can you give me some money so I can buy the sticker pack? I got the sticker pack when we started selling those things. And I remember that was like my earliest kind of entrepreneur experience. I even started selling those sticker packs to my cousins and stuff. And again, my aunt had to buy it because it was for my cousins. And so I remember that early entrepreneur endeavor. But as I got into my career, I was always interested in tech, but I had no idea how to get into it. I studied international business, came back, got a job in advertising. For a while, I was doing network marketing, if you know what that is, where you're selling soap powder door to door. And I eventually got into more like sales type jobs. And I realized that I was pretty good at selling. I was good at talking to people and telling them, buy my product or buy this thing. And eventually I got into what I think of as more grown-up jobs where I was managing sales teams and kind of helping them grow their business. But I always liked the idea of technology. And I guess the ecosystem in Malaysia wasn't as advanced back then. I didn't know how to start something. But I remember one day somebody saying that, have you heard of this thing called Groupon, which was like a very, very early day e-commerce kind of idea. You could get a bunch of people together, buy something on the cheap, and buy it as a group, hence Groupon, like a group coupon, basically. And so we thought, hey, this is such a cool idea. We can build that for Malaysia. It seems simple enough. I didn't build it, but I got headhunted for a job that was very similar. And so I started that job, right? And eventually that led me to being involved in e-commerce, which then led me to start my company, which was a travel company, which I had no experience doing, by the way. I had no background in travel. But that led me to eventually selling the business to AirAsia and meeting Tony Fernandez for the first time. That led to opportunities in, getting involved in the venture capital space, in investment space, which kind of led to where I am right now with ScaleUp Malaysia and Remote Ventures, where we help companies grow and scale. And then with Remote Ventures, we kind of incubate and create products from scratch. So basically, that's kind of how the journey started. So calling me an entrepreneur, I think is the easiest way to describe it. Basically, we're people who look for opportunities and we hope that we can solve them. And in my case, something with technology and with digital solutions.
No, okay, that's a very interesting story, and we'll go into a bit later about kind of sometimes the bravery that might be required to make those decisions. That sometimes I'm going to give you an alternative description of yourself, if you don't mind, Aaron.
Sure.
But I said to my wife, "Oh, I'm meeting Sarma this afternoon." She said, "Oh, I was in a meeting with him. He's like the Malaysian George Clooney," she said.
Whoa. Okay. Thank your wife for me. I appreciate that very much.
So so I wouldn't let her join the interview this afternoon, and you won't be meeting her again. So
Okay.
that was fine.
Thank you.
No, I'm teasing. I thought that was but she did say that. And I thought that was interesting. I've watched a bit about you with the TED talk that you did a little while back, and you mentioned a few things there. One of the things that really caught me was this opening line that you believe in the power of entrepreneurialism, or being an entrepreneur, and the power of tech together to really change people's lives. Can you give some examples of how that actually, that does work?
I guess this whole pandemic and the fact that all of us have had to stay home has kind of shown how tech has influenced our lives, right? I can only imagine what it would have been like to have a pandemic like this in the 80s.
Mm.
where we could all stay at home and there was almost no way to get food or no way to get, stuff delivered to the house. Technology has kind of taken over the way we live. We are right now at a push of a button. My mom can get her favorite food delivered to the house. So if you run out of printer ink, you can get a cartridge delivered to your house on an e-commerce platform. Or if you run out of groceries, you can do the same. If you're bored, you can switch on your computer and watch television on demand. Kids these days don't understand that when I was a kid and I wanted to watch a cartoon, it was only 5 o'clock every day on the weekdays. That's it, right? We had no choice. If we missed it, it's over, right?
Yeah.
And so I think technology has already influenced and impacted a lot of lives because it's made our lives better. It's given us an opportunity to actually live our lives with these services in hand. And I believe entrepreneurship is really taking advantage of these technologies to really serve people. We've got a platform which helps creators connect with their audience, right? And we've built a platform for that. I've seen another platform in our portfolio at ScaleUp where they help blue-collar workers earn a living and track their performance over time. And eventually they're going to help with building a wallet service for them and build like an economy from a digital place for them to kind of operate in. So I think technology has this interesting ability to transcend, and it allows people with very little capital to kind of break into a new industry without much experience, because it's a great leveler of sorts, right? Whereas back in the day, if you wanted to create a restaurant, you had to go and get the money to go and start up a restaurant. You probably have to go and spend almost $1 million ringgit to renovate it. I had to know how to cook, and just the ability to get started would be kind of difficult. But with technology, it takes a couple of guys, maybe can build a website pretty quickly and try and see if that works. And if that works, you can build on and grow from there and create more interesting products from there.
And it's also almost kind of broken down borders, isn't it? The way things are, and it's almost in a physical way as well. I know instantly, I can speak to friends, relatives, parents here at the school at any time. But actually, even sending things around the world has become incredibly quickly. I know I received something the other day that left the UK one day and was with me at home 2 days later. The opportunities for international growth and, like you say, as an entrepreneur, are enormous. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I think that's a great example of getting products like the next day to your house, and that would have been unheard of even 5 years ago, right? But it's accelerated in such a rapid clip that now you can have that kind of service and that kind of ease of living with these kinds of services.
Yeah, great. Another part of your TED talk, you mentioned this idea, this saying of Confucius, where Confucius says that a person has two lives. There's the first life, and then there's the real life when they realize they've only got one.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I thought afterwards, actually, maybe there are even more than two lives, because sometimes we keep forgetting.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you talked about the birth of your child as being something that was a life-changing, or maybe changed your focus. A few years down the line, is that still something you feel was a really life-changing decision and change of direction?
I'd say absolutely. And I think I'm assuming young people may be watching this at some point, some of the students, right? When you're young, you think you've got all the time in the world. And you think you've got, you got plenty of time to do the things you want to do. And I found myself doing that in my 20s. I always felt like, I could do something later. I'll figure out later. I'll go and start that company another time. And in the end, I never actually did it because I always felt I had more time, right? But it was then when I had my daughter, and I realized, I'm getting older now, and the energy levels maybe not as great as when I was younger, right? The creativity is not as great as when I was younger, and so I realized, I got a limited amount of time to really make things happen. And really, when you run a business, every business is at least a 7, 10, 20-year endeavor, right? And in itself takes time as well. So the earlier you start, the quicker you see the results. And when you realize that you don't have much time, you kind of focuses the mind to kind of take action quickly.
Okay, and I think you're right. But also at the same time, I'm putting myself, like you mentioned, to the students at school, and about this idea that they've got in there, what is it like for them to see somebody like yourself, and the conversations that go around in our heads? How much of it is about being brave do you think? How much is it about, actually stepping out, would you say?
I think there's a lot to do with bravery, or some would say insanity. There's a fine line, I think. But I think it's the ability to say that I'm going to go out on a ledge without really knowing what the future holds. There's a saying I really like, or like a illustration I like about how entrepreneurship is like jumping off a cliff and building a plane on the way down. And really, especially when you start your entrepreneurial journey and when you're building something from nothing, you really have no clue of where this is going to end up, right? And if you were to ask me, like, would I have imagined myself here right now, 5 years ago or 10 years ago, I'd say no way. I never would thought this would be where I ended up. A lot of it is really, I think, luck. A lot of it is about taking advantages of the opportunities that come in your way. But a lot of it is just the courage or the willingness to try and to be willing to make mistakes.
Right.
And I think like maybe it's a thing in Asian culture. We're not trained to fail. It's a lot of the way we grew up is about you got to be successful, you got to work hard, get the A's in school, and then maybe later we'll talk a bit about what I was like as a student. But these are the kind of ways that a lot of Asians grow up, right? We're never taught to. It's okay, you can make a mistake because you can try again. And I think part of being an entrepreneur is not just being brave is one thing, but realizing that making mistakes is not the end of the world. It's just a way for you to get better and improve and make more mistakes. But you only have to get it right once. And once you get it right that one time, people think you're very smart. But actually, it's all the failure that came before it.
I think you've scratched upon something that's really actually important there about this idea of being able to accept, learn from, and move on from failures, and being able to describe them in a way that don't then cause you to spiral, if you like, downwards in terms of your own self-image. And I do think when I'm working with the students that I have here from all different countries across Asia, to ask them to describe something that they think they failed at and what they learned from that, I think is one of the questions they find the most difficult to answer. So for yourself now, then, let's say, let's say we ask you that, there must have been things for you that have gone wrong, that didn't go the way you expected it to. I mean, that comes with the territory, I guess, being an entrepreneur. Yeah. How do you build that resilient mindset that picks yourself up and say, okay, that didn't go right. It doesn't mean that I'm useless. This word catastrophize. I don't catastrophize. I look at it and I move on. How are you able to do that again and again without losing that resilience, would you say, Aaron?
So I think that one thing that has really helped me in the journey is not to look at these experiences as consequential, right? Like, it's not the end of the world if you fail at a business, or you fail at anything really. If you want to create something, it doesn't work out. But to look at it as a learning experience, right? Like, I didn't get this particular thing right, but I'm going to learn from this so that the next time it doesn't happen again. And it's that path of self-refinement, I think, is really helpful as you kind of plot your entrepreneur journey. So I think think of it as like a path to continuous improvement, and that it's a learning experience, right? And I think that's really important. Another thing is that we shouldn't look at the journey in comparison to other people. So people always say like, this other guy is more successful than me, and it's human, right? So I sometimes look at this as well, and like, wow, that guy's doing so well. But actually, what is really the case is that you're really playing against yourself, and in a way, it's like, I know there may be kids watching, but it's like playing a game of cards, right? You can't get the other guy's cards. You only have your cards, and you're just responsible for how you play your hand. What the other guy does is none of your business, actually. You're playing against the house. And so in a way, like when you run a business, it's like that as well. You're really in the process of getting the best outcome you can get. And it's not really about what other people do. So I think a lot of the fear around failure is what other people think of you, and really nobody really cares actually, because ultimately when it's about how you do. And I think the final point is that a lot of people who are successful are actually serial failures, right? And we just don't hear about the failures, because the way the world works is that we glorify the success and ignore all the failure below it, right? And I think everybody who's truly been successful has failed multiple times before they got to that one victory, but everybody remembers the victory. And I think that's kind of the way people think. So I think number one, take it as a learning experience. Number two, kind of, remember that, you're playing against really yourself. Number three is like, ultimately, you just have to win once. And that's all everybody will remember anyway. So, yeah.
Just going to get that one win. But you know what? I think when you say there about you're playing against yourself, I think often young people, and perhaps I think as adults too, we are our own worst critics, aren't we? We're the ones who actually give ourselves the biggest beatings, if you like, and we're the ones who beat ourselves up terribly when we think we've made those mistakes. And I just wonder, how do you? So, I mean, I did an assembly this week, and it's funny how there was like it was based on a very short, almost like a poem, almost like a statement, where it's imagining somebody listening to their own thoughts in their head and working out how to move on. And the voice inside this person's head says, "It's impossible," says pride. "It's risky," says experience. "It's pointless," said reason. "Give it a try," whispered the heart. So my question is, when do we listen to our hearts and when do we listen to our minds? And which one do we let win? And how do we discern between chasing our ambitions, but also remaining sensitive to those, I don't know, being sensible perhaps? I don't know. Any ideas regarding that?
Yeah. So I think that's a really, really interesting framing, and I like the framing, right? Where it's the different stimulus that you get when you make a decision, or stimuli rather. I would always tell somebody to follow their heart, because sometimes your heart knows something that your other senses may not know. But I also would caveat that with it's one thing to follow the heart, but it's also, you got to understand what the heart is driven to. And I feel people tend to be motivated by sometimes the wrong things, right? And so sometimes it should, you should be motivated by the problem that you want to solve, or you should be motivated by the outcome that you want to achieve for somebody else's life, or making that impact into somebody else's life, or it's for climbing that impossible hill that you have, right? Those are really good motivations, because it's about really becoming a better you. And whenever it's about becoming a better you, it's never going to be really an easy path, but it's going to be totally worth it. But when the path is about, oh, I'm going to do this because I can make a profit, or I'm going to do this because I want to become famous, or I want to do this because I'm going to, it's for some sort of selfish motivation. And don't get me wrong, I think entrepreneurship in and of itself can be selfish as well, because you're trying to make something out of yourself. But when it's about money, or it's about pride, or it's about putting somebody else down, then maybe the heart is in the wrong place, and then maybe don't follow your heart. But I think if you're really trying to do something because you really believe in it, you really don't want to make a difference in the world, you really believe that this is a unique problem that only you can solve, then follow your heart.
Okay, that's very, very interesting. Lots of thoughts come to mind. One of these, I think I've read a few things. You've got to know why you want to do something, isn't it? What is the reason behind, not what you want to do or how you're going to do it, but why you want to do it is very important. Yeah, okay. But parents will be saying, I think sometimes to their children, don't follow your hearts. What you're describing to me sounds like you want to run off a cliff and build a plane, and hopefully it will fly before you land on the surface. Don't do that.
I think parents, I can understand it being a parent myself, right? Like, obviously, don't do something crazy. But it's one thing to say that my heart tells me to do this, but then you got to put in the work, right? It doesn't end there with just that gut instinct, or that desire, or that that impulse, right? It's more than that. It should be, I want to do this thing, but now I'm going to put in the work to make it happen. So maybe you need to talk to some people, talk to experts who understand the space. Maybe you need to do your own research and go and study and read as much as you can about the thing you want to do. Maybe you need to go and talk to customers, or talk to potential clients, and so do the work, right? It's one thing to say that it's my heart, and I'm going to create I'm going to build a civilization on Mars. Great, fantastic, it's a great idea, but you got to do the work and understand that the journey is long and that it's not going to come for free, right? And so I think parents, understandably, don't want their kids to do something reckless, but kids should say, like, if this is your passion, show your parents that you're willing to put in the effort and the work to get there. And sometimes that means study for your exams.
Okay.
go and do well in school, and that gets you to that point where prove to your parents that you're a good steward of your time, because then they'll be willing to give you time to do the thing that you're passionate about.
So it's that balance, isn't it? You want, if it's all in the mind and not in the heart, then that's no way to live. And if it's all in the heart but it's reckless, yeah, it's getting that balance right, isn't it? But
Yeah.
earlier on, you're talking there about working hard, but you mentioned earlier about the importance of luck. And I remember, I think a commentator cheekily asked Gary Player, who's a very famous golfer, and they said, "You seem to be very lucky today, Gary Player." And he was seriously offended by that point. He said, "Yes, the strange thing is, the harder I practice, the luckier I get." So, what's that balance between luck and hard work and getting the right outcome?
I think it's absolutely correlated, right? I think when we think people are lucky, we also, again, and this is a human thing, we look at the outcome, right?
Mm.
We say like, the outcome was positive, therefore the person was lucky. But I think it's all about, I guess in football, for example, right? It's not. Is it lucky that the person's in front of the goal when he kicked the ball? Maybe when the maybe, but he had to be at a position where he was ready to take the shot, and he had practiced for months and months and months with his precision in kicking the shot. So yes, there's an element where the opportunity needs to come onto your lap, and that some people could call luck. But your ability to capitalize on that opportunity, that's skill and practice and all the hard work that goes into it. So I do think that I think luck comes all the time. Like opportunities come from all angles, but your ability to take advantage of the opportunity, I think that's something that comes with practice and skill and all the hard work that goes into that.
Not just being in the right place at the right time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what about then if when you achieve success? Is that it? I mean, how do you've talked about being you've been a serial failures, but also I think there's some serial successes too. What is it that keeps somebody, they've had that failure or they've had that success? What is it that keeps somebody going, to be always looking to the next thing, being excited about the next step and so on? What is it that, I don't know, for you personally then, that drives you forward in that way?
And I guess that's why it's what I said earlier about what drives you. It shouldn't be money. It should be pride. It shouldn't be to beat somebody else or put somebody else down. It comes from the heart because of your desire, and that why is really important to answer, right? And I think for every young person listening to this, it's you got to figure out your personal why as quickly as you can. Actually, if you can go through that journey and learn what makes you tick, that's really important, right? And so it took me a long time to figure this out, and to be honest, I'm still figuring this out as well. But I've learned that when I am passionate about something, that I should pursue it and keep pursuing it.
Is this idea of being a serial failure, keeping going and finding the thing that keeps you alive, if you like, and excited about the work that you do? And I think I can understand that. Because in my role, sometimes I'm working on the computer, I'm emailing, I'm doing all this sort of thing. And if I want to reignite my passion for why I'm doing something, I go and find some children to speak with. I go and talk.
Absolutely, yeah.
I would teach a lesson. And you're reminded then of all the why you take that, why you take on this role and what's so exciting about it. What's the same thing for an entrepreneur? What's your favorite part of the day where you're feeling a bit, you're flagging a little bit? What is it that you might do that actually reignites your energy?
I think that's a great question. I love the way you kind of brought the question up, because I think the whole idea of understanding your why is encapsulated in the illustration you just gave, right? You're not passionate about replying to emails in the middle of the night. No, I'm sure you're passionate about waking up early in the morning to have to go to class. But what you are passionate about is the change you make in the lives of the children. And I think realizing that that's where the passion really is really key, because it makes you willing to do all the uncomfortable things because you're willing to do that one thing to help change the life of the kid. And I guess for me as well, I think what was important to me is to understand which part of the entrepreneurial process I enjoy, right? And so I've learned I really like the creation part of being an entrepreneur.
Oh, okay.
So I enjoy creating new products. I love that what I call the primordial soup phase, of building something, right? Where it's all messy and you have no idea what you're doing and you're literally throwing stuff against the wall, but you're doing lots and lots of experiments until you get something right. I do enjoy that part, right? And working with the team, brainstorming in the room, I enjoy that process, because what gives me satisfaction at the end of the day is, seeing a product come to life, and that to me is really exciting, right? And even with and I am doing that now with some new remote ventures, but even with ScaleUp, our accelerator program is really helping the teams kind of find that moment of life, or that spark that really makes something happen. So that's really exciting to me, to be part of that process. And it's that understanding that I like that makes me endure all the other things that I don't like to do. Like, working on spreadsheets and working on, responding to thousands of emails and, that kind of stuff. Maybe not so exciting, but I'm willing to do all the other things which I may not like as much, because I enjoy this particular aspect of it. Yeah.
So in terms of, if you like, financial success, isn't it? I mean, this is what, a company is there to make profit in many ways, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so, and you talked before about not chasing the profit, but chasing the thing that really drives your hard work and the thing that is your ambition. And will then if you like, the financial success, will that just follow, or should you chase the finance, or should you, I think I know where you're going with this, but you still need to put food on the table, don't you? So how do you make
absolutely,
that balance?
Yeah. So I think, like, I don't think it's an either or choice. I don't think it's a binary option, right? Where you either choose, I guess, how do you say, like, choose the why, the reason you're doing this over the finance, right? I think if you do a good job delivering value to the people you want to deliver value to, the financial rewards will come as a natural byproduct of it. And it's because you create value for people that people will pay you for it, right? Like, because they see that you're generating value. And I think that's really the where I think entrepreneurs should think about, like, how do I create value for the people around me? And that value I create is how I'm going to make money. But if you look at it the other way, how do I make money? You start thinking of things of, how do I squeeze money from every party in the equation, right? Maybe from the consumer, maybe it's from the supplier, maybe it's from the service provider, or whatever, right? And then somebody gets kind of the raw end of the stick, because what you're doing now is extracting value rather than creating value. And I think that's the distinction, I suppose. It's about really understanding on the why you're doing it and create more value, and that's kind of how you'll be successful.
And your role now has changed a little bit, where you're actually identifying other people's really good ideas and other people's and developing those ideas. What's the most important, the person or the idea?
That's a great question. So, one thing, an analogy I've always used when we make an investment decision these days is that I look at it as, it's like a horse, a jockey, and a racetrack, right? And so the horse is like the product of the company, right? Or the business plan or whatever, right? And then the racetrack is like the marketplace that you're operating in. And the jockey is the guy running it, right? And I always believe that, what's really important, obviously you need to have a good racetrack, because, if, it's got to be in an industry that, there's a lot of users, a lot of opportunity to make money. That's important as well, right? So, don't sell a super niche product that only 10 people will buy. You're not going to build a business on that, right? So that's important. But if you look at the jockey and the horse, right? You can fix a poor horse, or a horse that's not really doing a good job. You can change the horse, or you can, feed the horse more better food to make it stronger. But the jockey is bad. It doesn't matter. You can give him the best horse in the world. He's not going to perform because the jockey is poor. So we actually make decisions these days by looking at the entrepreneur. And in fact, this is like, we've invested now in 21 companies at ScaleUp Malaysia so far, right? And 20 plus companies in, we've realized more and more that it's so important to pick the right guy versus the actual business, because the business can change, the economy could shift, we could be hit with a pandemic. But what we've realized is that a good entrepreneur is able to figure it out, and the poor ones will eventually kind of fizzle out.
Okay.
Even though they may have had a better product. Yeah.
I agree. So now then, so I've got the school here, and I've got my students. and you're looking for those good guys or girls to really run their ideas. What are you looking for? What is it that makes that difference between, I want that person in my team, I want to back that person, and someone else who leaves you less convinced? What is, how, what can those young people develop? What kind of characteristics can they develop to achieve that level of trust, if you like, and delivery?
So I think the first thing I look for is a level of energy,
Ah,
right?
okay.
You need to have some energy. And don't get me wrong, I don't mean you have to be an extrovert, right? Because I'm not an extrovert. I know you won't believe this, but I'm not. I'm actually an introvert, right? And I think we've talked about this before, actually,
Yeah.
in different contexts, right? But it's really about you as the entrepreneur displaying that you're really passionate and excited about something, right? And it doesn't have to be you bouncing off the walls, but when you talk about it, it really comes out. Because you don't want somebody who's like, lazy to get out of bed, doesn't really want to do the work, always tired. You want somebody who's like, at 3 o'clock in the morning, I got an idea, let me text somebody and get some feedback. You want somebody who's really passionate about what they do. The other thing that's really important is that there must be this willingness to learn.
No.
So I look for people who are also very curious, right? And that curiosity is really important, because especially when you're running a business, sometimes you don't have all the answers. Actually, all the time you don't have the answers. So you got to be willing to figure it out as you go. And you got to be diligent enough to find answers even when you don't have the answer, right? And so people who are like willing to learn and are curious enough to keep learning and are clearly on this ever learning cycle, that's really important. And I think good entrepreneurs, they know how to learn. Like, it's either they'll go read it in a book, or they'll go and search for it on the internet, or they know how to seek people out who can give them the answers. And I think people who have this kind of skill set is really valuable. And thirdly, obviously you need somebody who's hardworking, right? And I think having people who are willing to put in the hours is really important. There's that one thing I learned from my dad is that there's no substitute for hard work, right? And I get everybody who says you have to work smart, and I completely agree. But it doesn't mean that when you work smart, you work an hour a day and hope to get successful either, right? So you still have to put in the hours and still have to put in the work to get where you want to get.
That great, thank you. I can see I've written down. I've got some words here. We've got passion, we've got curiosity, we've got energy, we've got the hardworking, and so on. And they're really interesting. But what about the thing that I'm also picking up from you this afternoon that is really strong, and I wonder how you've developed? How important are those interpersonal skills? Not just having the passion, the being curious and hardworking, but there must be something else that means, do you know what? I think I'm going to really enjoy working with that person, or I want to work with that person. There's an infectiousness, if you like. How important is that, do you think, in choosing the right people?
I think there is a level of that part, that kind of engagement as well when you look at an entrepreneur. And in fact, we do make decisions on that basis as well when we look at the jockey or the guy who's running the business, because ultimately we realize, because we're investors as well, this is a long relationship, and we're going to be investing in the company and therefore in the company for many years to come. Could be 5 years, could be 10 years, and we don't want to be married to an entrepreneur who we don't like, and vice versa as well. They don't want to be stuck with us if they don't like us either. So part of the way we structured our program is that we don't make an investment decision until 3 months in, and part of that is kind of optimized for this outcome, where we'll get to spend time with them, we'll do coaching with them, we'll be challenging them on ideas, we'll be going back and forth on different things, and by the end of 3 months we'll realize, do we like these guys or do we not like these guys? And if we really like the team, then it's a much easier decision to make, because there's already that chemistry and there's already a working relationship that we can build together.
Yeah, no, very, very interesting, Aaron. I think getting those, those people, because often we have many of our students, they're incredibly hardworking, but it's also developing that confidence to just, I don't know, kind of do what we're doing here this afternoon.
Yeah.
I mean, it's quite a daunting idea to think, right, you've got 45 minutes to speak to somebody you don't know very well. There are going to be cameras on both ends. Away you go. And yet and yet we've managed it. Almost,
Yeah,
it feels like that some young people should maybe have to try that out for themselves sometimes, recording themselves. A lot of interviews now are just recorded.
absolutely. Yeah,
The
yeah,
idea of just sitting in front of a camera and recording yourself talking for 10
yeah,
minutes.
yeah.
It's a scary thought. So let's just again, as a head teacher with the students, let's take you back to your classroom then, back when you were young. How old are we thinking when we take you back to your
Whoa.
classroom?
So uh, I guess let's say
The
I'm
one
thirteen.
the classroom that sticks in your mind. How old is Aaron in that classroom?
I guess I was 13 or 14 years old. In Form 1, I think that's like a very clear memory of mine. Yeah.
Okay, and you remember your teacher?
I remember some of them. Yeah. Yeah, but yes, I do.
So if you were back there, you were 13, and 14, and obviously you're, let's take you back there, and you had a chance to do things again. Maybe you'd do some things differently. Maybe you'd buy the first few Bitcoins and that sort of thing, but that opportunity is missed. Is there anything
I'm not that young though, but anyway.
but if you had the chance again to go back, are there things that you think you should have done more of? Are there things you should have done less of? Are there ways, that if you had that time of your last few years at school and then maybe higher education, would you have done anything differently?
Yeah, I think it, what I wish I knew when I was younger was to cultivate an attitude of being able to kind of pick things up and learn for myself, right? It was very much dependent on what was done in class, and the syllabus when I was growing up was very much based on memorization, and I was terrible at that.
Okay.
And in fact, ironically, I've actually become a way better student as I got older. So I was actually very poor in school when I was in my early teens and even my late teens. But the second I hit college, somehow things started clicking, and I realized, you know what, I can figure this out myself. I don't need, you know, and I just have to be diligent and be willing to ask a lot of questions. And something about maybe getting older or being less self-conscious was very good for me actually, as I kind of went through my educational journey. But when I was young, I was very introverted. I didn't want to ask teacher questions. When they asked me to say anything in class, my head would be down and I'll be a nervous wreck if they would ask me to speak back then. So it was not, I think I grew up much better in terms of my own educational journey versus where I started when I was 30, which is why I think of that quite vividly. Yeah.
Okay. And as you were growing up and you're thinking to yourself what you're going to do and how you're going to develop, I know for me, a person very important to me was my physics teacher. I'm a physics teacher myself, and he, if you like, was my mentor or my. I thought I want to be like Mr. Thomas, and I've been very fortunate to have conversations with him and thank him for his work. Did you have similar role models for you that helped you think that I now want to be like that person? I'm going to try and be successful like them. Are there those role models with you?
Yeah, I mean, I think my father was a huge role model in my life because he was a businessman. So kind of like the idea of doing business was something that always was an option for me.
Right.
And so I kind of, I don't think I picked up particular business skills from him. But one thing I did learn was the value of working hard, and that nothing in life comes to you easy, right? And so that's one lesson I learned from young, right? Like you want something, you've got to go and work for it. It's not going to come and fall in your lap. So I really appreciated that he kind of taught me. Over the years, obviously there were people who were very influential in my life. I've had teachers who in both ways, right? I had one teacher who said, when you grow up, you'll go and collect rubbish for a living. She's like, yeah, I had one of those teachers. I also had teachers who would sit down with me and say, look, you're actually very bright, you're just very lazy. If you just put in the work, you'd actually get there. And that was really important. And that was my Form 4 ad math teacher who kind of sat me down and like yelled at me and knocked some sense into me. And so I think there have been different role models over the years who kind of have shown me this. And very recently, guys like Tony Fernandez actually has taught me a lot about having a big dream and a big vision. And if I were to think of a mistake I've made in recent years is I feel like I should have dreamed bigger. And and the logic part of me really kind of hampered maybe what maybe I could have built earlier on, right? And so that's something that always sticks to me till this day, the idea of dreaming big and really pursuing what you're passionate about.
You only got one life, make the most of it, as it were.
Make the most of it. Yeah,
Gosh,
exactly.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
indeed. Okay, well, you've talked there a little bit, sort of, I think we're coming towards the end of our conversation in some ways. And often when I'm interviewing people who I want to come, they're interviewing to come and work at the school, I often ask them this one question that I think is important to them. I ask, can you tell me one thing of which you are most proud? What is the thing that makes you most proud?
It's not a thing, but I think the what I could say I'm most proud of is the fact that now that I guess life is a little bit more stable, and I've been able to build a business that I'm happy with, and I've got a little bit more freedom. Is the fact that I can be with my kids when they're growing up, right, and have the option to spend time with them. I think that's really important to me. That obviously with the lockdown, most of us had no choice. But I guess the fact that I'm an entrepreneur, I don't work for anybody, nobody controls my time. Where I am at any point of the day is because I decide to be there. That's really powerful to me because I can be with my kids and be with my family when they need me, right? And to me, that's priceless, right? I'm very proud of being able to do that. Actually.
No, that's fantastic. No, thank you very much for that. Okay, well, it's been a fascinating conversation with you, Aaron. Thank you ever so much again for your time and for the generosity of your answers in many ways, because we've covered so many different things there in our conversation. But I'm hoping, if students are listening or parents are listening, that they might pick up some of those things that you, despite, if you like, you talked about serial failures, you've talked about great successes, you would still say, even after that journey, you'd still say, listen to your heart, go for it, do the things that actually fire you up, if you like, the things that make you tick.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much. I think it's important that, like you said, you said when you started, we only have one life, right? And you need to have something that makes you want to wake up in the morning and just go and do things and, and spend hours of your life and go through a lot of pain to do because you follow your heart. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think I've said to students, you might spend at least 100,000 hours at work. Choose it wisely. Choose it wisely.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And it sounds to me like you say you've got a very interesting, the way things have set up for you. And I wish you all the very, very best. I look forward to having other conversations with you in the future and getting you to come to school, visit the school again in the future. And we'll look out for how this scale up and your other ideas are going to develop. But just thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Matthew. It was such a pleasure. Thank you.
Okay. All the best. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.